Well, the Federal Treasurer has asked regulators to crack down on high debt home loans. For more on this, I'm joined by our business reporter, Edward Boyd. Ed, the Treasurer is trying to reduce the amount of over-leveraged home loans in Australia. Should we be worried about this?
Look, I don't think we need to be too worried about this just yet, but it is obviously a bit of a concern for the Treasurer. When you look at record low interest rates, what do? They encourage people to take out home loans, but couple that with rising house prices, and people need to be taking out larger and larger home loans. So the average size home loan, according to the Bureau of Statistics, is around $570,000. And in reports in the Financial Review today saying about 1 in 5 people with a home loan are now having a home loan that's 6 times the size of their income. So this is that sort of high debt leveraged ratio that the Treasurer is getting a bit concerned about. So according to the AFR, there's a quote here that he said in the paper this morning. We must be mindful of the balance between credit and income growth to prevent the build-up of future risks in the financial system. Carefully targeted and timely adjustments are sometimes necessary. There are a range of tools available to APRA to deliver this outcome. So back in 2014, APRA was concerned with the number of investors buying properties, and that was really driving up prices back then. So they decided to crack down by making sure that a person taking out a home loan will be able to afford that loan if their interest rate was at 7%. Well, interest rates right now are much lower than that. So I guess the question is, what will APRA do? Will they look at this 7% guide for interest rates again? Think about if you have a home loan, paying it off at a 7% rate, what that would do to your monthly mortgage repayments and whether people would be able to service those loans. So it is a bit of a concern, but there's no timeline yet on this crackdown. So I think that the Treasurer is just testing the waters at the moment, getting the feelers out there before really making any decisions.
It's interesting to see this in the context of already banks starting to take into account how you can pay that home loan, assuming a 5% rate. So another 2% on that would, change the dynamic altogether. And a lot of banks are moving independently of the Reserve Bank on their fixed loans at the moment too.
Yes, banks are really tweaking their fixed loans right now. I think lots of banks are looking at their customers and their balance sheets and making decisions based on that. But yes, it is obviously an issue with housing affordability continues to get more and more difficult for people in certain parts of Australia to buy homes. And I feel like a lot of people have no choice. They feel like they need to take out a really large mortgage to just get into the property market. And that's really the thing that's driving up property prices across the country. So it is a bit of a conundrum right now.
Yep, absolutely. It is almost unaffordable for many first home buyers. There'll be more on this, and it's something that we will keep a very close eye across as we start to come out of COVID, see what happens with the property market. But let's talk about Qantas. Qantas has called on Queensland and WA to reopen state borders. A lot of people have called for this, so maybe Queensland and WA will listen to Qantas at 80% double vaccination rates. And Qantas, interestingly, is starting to make some moves, circumventing Perth, for example.
Yes, look, WA's border is, well, we know it's closed to to the east coast, really, for New South Wales and Victoria for the time being. So Qantas have their marquee flight. It goes from Perth to London direct. They're actually going to change that from Darwin to London instead until April 2022, April next year at least, because that's when they think Perth may change its stances on borders. So that is a daily flight that would have been going through Perth. It's now likely to go through Darwin, potentially through Singapore. So that's a substantial amount of business that Perth Airport's going to lose there from that flight. But Qantas yesterday were obviously very happy with the New South Wales government announcing its plans to really reopen and have travel back again when people are at 80% double vaccinated, and Victoria have the same plans as well. So Qantas Chief Executive Alan Joyce this morning was saying that one of the busiest flight routes in the world is between Sydney and Melbourne. That's currently doing 1 flight per day. The plan is to get that back up to pre-COVID levels, which was 55 flights per day. And there's the hope that it can start ramping that up from the 5th of November onwards and potentially around Christmas be near that full capacity. But at the same time, Alan Joyce has spoken about the desire for lots of people to go on holidays to places like Queensland and WA. This is just a little quote from him this morning on 3AW radio.
Well, we're still hopeful that those other states will keep to the national plan and that once we hit the targets of 80%, that the borders do open. And that's what we're hoping will happen in Queensland. What we're finding, Ross, is that people will go where they can go to. So it will be pretty bad for the tourism industry in Queensland if they don't open for Christmas and the peak January season. But their loss will potentially be New South Wales win, or for New South Wales people, it will be Victoria's win.
So Qantas was one of the best performers yesterday on the stock market, along with a lot of other tourism stocks that are all obviously very pleased that travel is going to kick-start really from the beginning of November. So I'm going to be watching tourism sector today. But the market today, Laura, it's down a little bit. It's down about 0.5% in early trade.
Okay, Ed, thanks so much.